Despite thousands of complaints, we found a dismal record of actually putting swindlers behind bars, leaving victims unprotected.
From day one, I mean, there were red flags.
She left him indigent.
Chuck Bauer was a proud Army veteran. Now, at 89, he was dead broke. And this is the woman accused of robbing him blind.
How could she possibly treat an elderly person like this and not have a conscience?
37-year-old Latasha Wisniewski met him, struck up a friendship, and moved in.
She could do no wrong, and I'm not hurting your father. I care for him.
Both his daughter and granddaughter quickly grew suspicious, even recording one confrontation.
And Grandpa, tell her you don't want her on the property anymore after she drops everything off today.
Wisniewski even got her name on the deed to Bauer's home.
And we were trying to explain to him, you know, what we were seeing, and he just thought she was such a nice person.
Finally calling the one agency in Ohio that's supposed to help.
One call does it all.
We had to constantly contact them. They would never even contact us.
She's talking about Adult Protective Services, a fractured program of underfunded and understaffed agencies, each operated independently by counties across Ohio. In fact, we found 14 counties have no program at all, leaving 500,000 elderly unprotected from swindlers. Even Cuyahoga, one of the largest, is coming under fire.
Yes, absolutely. I feel that they didn't follow up enough. I feel that they weren't asking the right questions. I feel that they weren't doing due diligence and that they weren't doing as much as they could have done.
Marlene Robinson-Statler heads up adult protection in Cuyahoga County.
They repeatedly reached out to you, and you repeatedly did nothing for them. Is that accurate?
That would not be accurate.
Bauer's case was among 810 complaints filed last year in Cuyahoga County alone, more than 4,000 across the state. But we found only 124 were actually turned over to police and prosecutors.
124, I agree with you, is a low number, but you also have to understand where we are limited, based on funding and based on our state mandate of what we have to do.
Even criminal background checks are not mandated. That's important. We found Latasha Wisniewski twice served time in prison, including theft from a disabled victim.
Did your office know that and move on it? Or were you unaware?
We were unaware as far as her being someone who had a criminal background. What I will say, though...
Shouldn't you, though, have known that?
No.
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 And I believe that if Adult Protective Services would have done their due diligence and worked with the police department a little bit more closely, that they would have probably been able to do something about this sooner.
And get her out of there sooner.
How does it get past an agency like that?
Well, it's a good question.
Brent Kerrville prosecutes crimes against the elderly in Cuyahoga County.
Latasha had enough control over Charles Bauer that she was able to convince Charles Bauer that he would reject any of APS's services.
Susan Marshall heads up Ohio's leading advocacy group for adult protection.
Do you suspect that there are cases that are going unprosecuted and not being referred to law enforcement?
Absolutely.
We found those investigating financial exploitation have limited training and resources.
Are they mandated to be licensed social workers? They are not.
They're not, and they're not mandated to be law enforcement officers.
No, we do not have law enforcement.
Essentially, they take a couple of courses and go out.
Yes.
The bottom line, there just isn't enough money to go around.
Do you believe that you have enough funding for Adult Protective Services to investigate these cases like financial exploitation? Is there enough money in reality?
No. No.
I am grateful to the detectives that stepped in, but not so much with Adult Protective Services, because I don't think that they did their due diligence on this.
Well, these interviews are rare. I spoke with a caregiver who admits she stole a fortune from the family that trusted her. Even more alarming, those being hired get little regulation or oversight.
I got to a point where I didn't care anymore.
Michelle Baker
I didn't know how to stop.
is now serving 7 years in prison.
I took advantage of his kindness.
She was a home health care worker.
Why did you do it?
I was going through a lot.
Instead, prosecutors say she's a thief, stealing more than $200,000.
She totally took over their finances. And when she took over those finances, she ended up embezzling virtually all of their money.
What did you do with all that money?
Sat in the casino for days.
In a casino?
Mm-hmm. In a casino.
Gambling away?
Gambling away.
Tens of thousands of dollars?
Yes.
From a man who trusted you?
Yes, absolutely, I did. I did.
And in Ohio, it's easy. Our investigation found a broken system of oversight and regulation.
I am struck by how much of this goes on.
There's a lot of it. I mean, just being in the medical field for so long.
There's a lot of it.
There's a lot of it, absolutely.
Is this happening more and more?
Absolutely. This is becoming a bigger problem. There's an aging population.
In Ohio, the 6th largest population over 65 in the nation, 1.8 million and growing. And so are home health care workers, 94,000 across Ohio, up 52% in just the last 10 years. So we wanted to know who's coming into your loved one's home.
I don't need to be licensed. I don't need to be certified. I don't need any specific training. Is all that true?
Yes, you do not need to, for non-skilled care, you do not need any specialized training, certification, or anything like that to be able to provide care. Now,
Joe Russell should know. He heads up the largest association of home health care agencies in Ohio.
it is as easy as just simply opening up a business and
hanging up a sign,
hiring
saying, a few people off the street,
and here's the services we're gonna provide, and then go out there and start marketing yourself.
That's why Russell is calling for increased standards and oversight.
The question really becomes is, what should we be doing to look at those agencies to ensure that they're not crooks, to ensure that they're not going to steal from these folks?
And we found even when families repeatedly complain to Adult Protective Services, the agency that's supposed to protect often fails to act. In one case, this woman was finally charged with stealing more than $600,000 from those she was caring for.
I'd like to ask you some questions about the charges against you, please.
And another, this time with a criminal history of theft, was ultimately charged with fleecing another victim's life savings.
These are serious charges. You're actually charged with fleecing.
We have
some questions.
Why don't you last daughter in the
Did you fleece his life savings?
But even if convicted, Adult Protective Services in Ohio fails to track them.
In terms of protecting the public, absolutely, there's a lot of value in creating a registry to identify some of the bad actors that are out there.
Michelle Baker has accepted responsibility for what she did.
I still know right from wrong. And what I did was very wrong.
And has a warning for families.
They need to be involved, first and foremost. Family, guardians, power of attorneys, they need to be involved. You can't just allow people to be there and just do what they're doing without knowing what they're actually doing.
And we found something else. If you hire a home health aide that caters strictly to private pay clients without Medicare or Medicaid, no one is checking on who's being hired or how they're performing on the job. I'm Chief Investigator Ron Regan. We found an alarming lack of regulation and oversight when it comes to caregivers coming into your home, allowing both agencies and those they hire to fly under the radar.
Rosa Rideout was 83 and needed a caregiver, a choice that can place your loved one at risk.
I was just totally alarmed because we hired her through an agency.
Alarmed because within weeks,
Mother was asking for money regularly, every couple of weeks.
Thousands of dollars unaccounted for.
What did you do?
Just did a simple Google search.
A Google search?
Yeah. And it came up with this, she's known as a sweetheart swindler.
Tanya Weiss is the sweetheart swindler, a caregiver with a secret.
Tanya, how are you? I can ask you a few questions, Tanya.
They hired her and had her in my mom's house at 2 o'clock.
In a matter of hours?
Yeah, 2 hours. I mean, for an interview, to be hired, and she was in my mom's house.
A caregiver with a history of fleecing the elderly. Convictions in Florida and Ohio.
Cold-hearted. I mean, she could take somebody's money and leave them homeless.
Dale Gillette spent years investigating Weiss.
She told me it wasn't so much about the money as it was a challenge of how much money she could get.
It's really a scary thing.
Weiss was not charged with a crime in Rideout's case, but the family sued Nightingale Home Support and Care in Lake County and was awarded an undisclosed settlement that was never paid, alleging it failed to perform a criminal background check. So what kind of agency would do that?
My name is Stella Nsong.
Stella Nsong, a registered nurse with no history of discipline, is the agency's owner. It's one of hundreds across Ohio that's strictly private pay, no Medicare or Medicaid reimbursement. That means no regulations and no inspections, leaving you in the dark.
I think I used the term the underground market.
That's why a national association representing home health care agencies is pushing for tougher standards.
You need a license to catch a trout in every state in the country, but you don't need a license to take care of a senior.
What does that allow?
It allows somebody like Tanya or anybody else to move to another county or another state, move in, and nobody knows that she's even there working.
Nsong also promotes other online enterprises, like her Six Figures Nurse Academy.
Welcome to launch your agency in a weekend.
Promotional videos
I am the go-to person.
that attempt to convince you
This is the place for all your answers.
she's a recognized expert you can trust.
That nurses can get rich without winning the lottery.
And while we found no complaints involving these enterprises, we did find this. An assisted living center that Nsong founded was shut down by the Ohio Department of Health. Plus, 17 Nightingale employees claimed Nsong failed to pay them, like Amber Boykin, hired without a shred of experience.
I never worked as a home health aide. I know the materials to be a home health aide, but I never actually had a job doing a home health aide.
Boykin's case is now being settled. For the remaining 16, a federal judge ordered $11,000 in back pay.
This went on for weeks.
Went on for weeks.
And for weeks you weren't paid.
Yeah, for weeks I wasn't paid.
The very same agency that hired convicted felon Tanya Weiss.
Just like you have a child sexual offender, a monster that preys on a senior.
Sir, why would you be here?
Well, I'd like to ask you about your past history, Tanya. Weiss shut the door. So we went to Nsong's agency for answers.
Is Stella here?
She's not.
Can you reach her for us?
I can try to text her, but I believe she's in New Jersey.
We finally found her on this webinar.
I will show you how to get in business for yourself quickly.
Describing how you too can make a salary like hers.
I started with $1,263. And in 36 months, I had made over $1 million of gross revenue.
Our producer later reached Nsong by phone, who told us, in Ohio, you do not need any certification, you do not need any special training, you don't need any kind of license if you keep it all private. But under state law, a criminal background check would have disqualified Tanya Weiss from ever being hired.
Weiss had an extensive criminal background, and how did she wind up being hired by you?
Goodbye.
Nsong hung up.
You need to know that you can trust them, and it's really a scary thing.